Right, we're off and running with the first ever South Coast user group. And obviously, hopefully next year, when we do the next one, we can do it face to face in a pub, or hire out the brewery in Blandford or somewhere close by. That'd be quite nice.
Or in Tommy's garage. That sounded like a good idea. He's got homebrew.
Sounds cheaper.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you don't know
see
what I
the
charge for
picture
it. You'll see.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Well, let's make a start. So I'm pretty sure we've all seen the agenda. So Kevin, you're up first. And I'll let you do your introduction. But it sounds like a good session on search. And Derrick, you're up after Kevin, and then just to finish up with Tom on the teams and applications within Teams. Sounds like a really good session.
I'd say finish up with, I'd say the headline act with Tom.
Indeed, save the best for last.
Tail off towards after the explosive start. We'll tail off towards the end.
I think it was more whoever got their agenda in first got to the top. But cool. All right. Well, Kevin, why don't I hand over to you? I guess you can. Also, you can share your screen.
Okay. Hopefully that's come through and showing a nice, slightly branded. Apologies. I did toy with reading those with grey hat beard ones, but it keeps our marketing teams happy to get the company name in there every now and then.
Name drop.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
So hello and welcome. I'm going to be covering Microsoft Search today, the what, the why and the how. And I'm sure some of you have used Search here and there, and you've probably even used Microsoft Search without even realizing it. So I'm going to cover some of the different elements to it and what you can do that you probably haven't seen before. First, a little bit about me, getting some badges in there just for Chris on this one. My name's Kevin McDonnell. I'm a solutions architect at CPS. We're a Microsoft Gold partner based in the UK. You can tell I've copied these slides from more international ones, obviously more UK focused. And I sit and do modern workplace. So Microsoft 365, SharePoint, Teams, Power Platform. I'm known as Jack of all trades, master of none, sadly. So even managed a bit of development in there. A blog at mcd79.com, not as often as I should these days, mostly because I also run a podcast, and we've had Mr. Huntingford as a guest on there. So we run the Grey Hat Beard podcast with myself, Al Erdley and Gary Trinder, and we talk every couple of weeks about the latest news across Microsoft 365 and Power Platform and Dynamics topics, and then we cover a particular topic. So last night we had Clarissa Gillingham on, and we talk about telling stories in the Power Platform. So give it a listen and let us know what you think. We're trying to beef up the YouTube page on that a little bit as well. So hopefully take a look at there. If you go to greyhatbeard.com, you can see more on there. I've been working with SharePoint off and on for about 15 years now, and a lot of that's been spent swearing about search and how you can find things and the fact that people can't find things. But at the same time, you can also build some pretty impressive solutions on top of it. We had a great intranet for one of the banks I used to work with, and it was all powered by search. There was huge amounts you can do with it, but you still get people complaining they can't find things and they just expect it to work. And back in the old days of on-premises, you had to manage indexes and work out why things weren't in there, why they were in there, and it's very complex. So the great thing is now Microsoft manages it all for you. But what do people actually think that search is? I tried to ask 40 people, and I tried to pick people mostly outside the SharePoint community who you would have thought would know the answer. At least they should have done. And then I took the responses and tried to get some common phrases, as you can see on the screen here. And as you'd expect, SharePoint and search came up quite a bit, but other ones like content and management put up. And what I loved to see was people as well, that it was all about people, documents and sharing and different things. So there's a few comments that came along that I picked out from that. People saying, I guess it's the ability to search for content within SharePoint sites, but that sounds too obvious. I mean, in some ways, that is a large part of it. A great one from Sharon Sumners, who runs the Cambridge Power Platform user group, who said, that's a fun question. It's everything from knowledge management to clutter management. I really like that phrase about clutter management. It's about finding your content when maybe your navigation doesn't pick it up. Some of my friends hadn't heard from me a while and found it a bit of a strange question, asking if I was bored. Maybe it's the ability to find items in SharePoint. And some were a little bit smug, and I think probably Googled or Binged the answer and said a service inside SharePoint allows users to quickly find documents, content, or people with a combination of search queries and filters. Now, I possibly should have asked what Microsoft Search was, but I kind of knew that people wouldn't know the answer. But what is Microsoft Search? This slide came from Ignite back in 2019, one of those last few face-to-face events, it seems. And it showed that Microsoft Search is about that same search experience, similar to what you get in SharePoint, but across everything. So whether you're searching for things from Bing, from Office.com, whether you're in PowerPoint, Outlook, Stream, Yammer, getting that same index, that same service, and the same AI services, all from that same place. If you're in PowerPoint looking for content, see the same when you go into Word or SharePoint. Looking to get your emails in Bing, that too. Want to find the last Teams message from within Windows? Well, that's coming in hopefully the not too distant future. Now, you may be listening to this and sort of seen some of the search and go, well, is it just SharePoint Search Extended? I'm sure many of you have either used SharePoint or come from a SharePoint background and know how powerful that can be and painful. But is Microsoft Search just that extended across other things? And the answer is no. It's actually built on top of the Bing technology. Does that mean that SharePoint Search is going away? Actually, far from it. As you can see from this slide, it's the build up from all the different search environments, whether it's from Outlook and the Exchange world, whether it's from Search Admin, or if it's from SharePoint itself. All those different search technologies feed into the central, formerly Bing-powered index that gets everything else. And as of now, you can also bring in your external data sources. So it's not just about your Microsoft 365, your Office 365 content. You can bring your own content into that same search experience. So when you're looking across those different headers, when you're going to Outlook, whether you've got old slides that you haven't updated, say Microsoft 365, apologies, I will get that at some point. But really, you can search and bring back those results all from the same place. But what does it actually look like? I'm going to move away from the slides and go into that really dangerous world of live demos. And here I've got a demo tenant here, just gone into the office.com portal. And if I click on search, first thing I notice is as soon as you click on there, you start to see results. So it's already got that AI powered services. It knows the kind of things you've opened previously, the people you've worked with, the sites you've accessed, and it's kind of going, yeah, you probably want to get into Outlook, or you probably want to look at the financial calendar. It's recommending things right from the off without you typing anything. If I do type something such as project, you get all sorts of different results. I've got project enabled in this tenant, so it'll bring back the project apps. I've got some custom apps deployed in here, so it's picking up those, it's picking up files, it's picking up sites. If I click on show more results, I can get even more of those. Start with all. Interesting there, I always forget it does that. It remembers where you were last within these different verticals. So I'm going to start with the all. And there you can see you're bringing back the SharePoint site, and I can expand that out. And it'll give me a bit more detail. If someone's put a nice bit of detail within there, it will help you find out about if that's the site you want to get. And interestingly, you can even search within this site. So we're starting to hear more and more with Microsoft Search about search within search. One of the things I'll mention later, but you will soon be able to search for a person and then search within their context. So if you know someone shared a document, but you can't remember what it was called or where they put it, you can search that person and then try and search for different documents and bring the data back. So making it even easier to find the stuff that you want to get. If I scroll down away from the sites, you'll see it's got different things like pages. We're getting back those SharePoint news pages that we can open in a new tab, and we can see when it was modified, how many times people have seen it. Where you get some of the nice stuff is looking at files. So again, you've got where it is, you've got that breadcrumb trail there, you can open it in a new tab. But you've also got a preview of the contents of that file. So this is a project requirements doc, and it's starting to pick up where in the file it's mentioning projects in there. If you hover over the doc, you can actually get a preview of the document itself. If you're looking for a file called project and project requirements, you've probably got hundreds where you've got those requirements that you've got access to. So knowing whether it's the right one, you might know from where it is, but more likely you're going to just have to do a quick browse. And I'm sure when you look through there and you see it says draft in big letters, then that's probably not the one you want. Or if that is the version, without having to spend the time to open it, there quickly from within search, you can see a little bit of intro into itself. Scrolling down, you've got all the things you'd expect with paging, so you can go through the different areas. You've also got along the top some filters. Now, the default filters you'll get from the main office.com page aren't particularly amazing. This is a demo tenant, so there's kind of all sorts of data and it hasn't got much there, but I can look at things from the past year. I can go back and look at any time and look at stuff that's older than a year, and you'll see it changes the different results there, but you don't get massive amounts from the main page itself. If we carry on looking at projects, you'll have noticed the verticals along the top here. So we can go and look at files. And if I know I'm looking for a file, I can filter and just bring those files back using these verticals along there. And I will come to these ones at the end a little bit later. But if I go into the filters now, because I'm looking at files, it's given me another option. So if I know I'm looking for a Word doc that's there as a set of, project requirements that's there as a Word doc, I can filter on those docs. So you've got a little bit more option you start to get with those filters that come in. You've got your sites there, and you've also got people.
Oh, hello, Paul. How are you?
Hello.
Not too bad, thanks.
So you've also got people there you can search within there. So you can see Irvin's a project manager and it's picked up there from the project side. Obviously, a lot of people are working on projects. If we pick another topic, maybe you spoke with someone in marketing, but you have a goldfish memory like me because you're getting older and older. It's depressing, isn't it? You can actually look for marketing and it'll pick up people who've got marketing in their job role. It's got people who've got skills within marketing. I think if we look at good old Megan Bowen, we can hover over there and we know that Megan's in the marketing department. So you're getting all those different bits of metadata all coming through from the that same search to help you find the people you want. Also, if you're on the people tab, it gives you the action. So it knows that probably what you want to do is get in contact with this person, drop them a mail, give them a call. Interestingly, it doesn't give you straight away from there the sending a message, but if you hover over them, then you can start a chat. So you can make that use of Teams, get in and contact them as well. See where they work, so which office they're in. I'll cover that a little bit more later. Still one of the pain points I haven't quite got working, but you can start to see the office and details around that. So you've got a lot within that search. So flip back to these slides. Now, given that you've got the search there, how does that look within SharePoint? Do you get the same sort of thing? Are we still seeing the same SharePoint? So we'll go back to the demo tenant again. And I'm just going to flip over to the Mark 8 project team. So when I search for project, that was one of the top results that came back. Very nice team site. You can see they're sharing the news on all the nice drones they're building within here. And right at the top here, hopefully you can see that, it says search this site. So when you go onto there, it changes this context depending on what you're trying to do. In this case, I'm looking for the site. And if I look for, say, requirements, it will bring back there all these documents, and you can see from the breadcrumb that all of these are within the Mark 8 project site. Most of these are files on that side. I think they're, maybe if I look for drone, you can see we start to get sites on there. If we look for, let's try Mark 8, I think that's the one that gives you a bit of both. So you're getting folders within there. You've got the OneNote that picks up the item. You've got the different pages. And again, you've still got those verticals, slightly different verticals, and they can be, these are the default ones. You can define different verticals for your own sites. You've got some access to put things there, which I'll show at the top level a little bit later. But you've still got that same sort of experience. Interesting, the icons, if I flip over to the last search and bring on files, you can see there you've got the project, the PowerPoint and Excel. You've got slightly different looking icons. So very similar, but there's some slight tweaks, but the content you'll get back will all be the same on there. What's really useful though is that you're on the site and maybe you're thinking it was on, you're looking for that file and you're thinking it was in this site, but you can't find it there. You can expand that search very easily just by clicking on the breadcrumb trail and going for organization. And because I'm searching for Mark 8, we'll probably see most of those coming from Mark 8. Let's pick another search. Let's go for requirements again. But the context of this now is across all the different ones. So you can see there I've got the brand site. So I've got the Mark 8 project one. I've changed that context of the site. It's changed the verticals. I'm now searching across everything. But what's nice is I haven't moved to where I am. I'm still within the search screen, still within the projects, the SharePoint site. And if I close that search, I'm straight there. I haven't had to move between pages. I haven't had to move between different areas. Right there, still able to continue what I was doing with SharePoint. So you're not moving that you're not moving that main page at all. You're just moving the context of that search. If I go into documents, you'll notice that it gives you a little pointer when it eventually loads. There we go. That now says search this library. So that context changes depending where you are. And if I look for that again, let's carry on looking for requirements. I will find requirements eventually. And here it's just filtering those results for the library. Slightly different result set because you're looking at a document library. It's giving that document library style view, and you've even got some view options there. As you'd see with a SharePoint list, I'll give my tile view. So if I wanted to search and I wanted to find the document from that front page, I can use those tiles and get an even easier way of seeing it. I can even sort that. I can add. Let's have a look at the modified dates. Let's have a look at older to newer and filter that. You can use it a lot in the same way you would with a document library. You can get your search results coming back like that to make it usable. So it really is context driven. If we go up into another site, and a horrible feeling I still haven't remembered to add that in there. So I'm going to drop it on this one. If we have a look at work, that was the one. Now, this work site is a hub site. Hopefully you know a little bit about SharePoint, and you can have your main top level landing pages as hub sites, which then has a set of other sites. It has a common menu, common design across those. And if I went into the sales and marketing, you can see I've gone into a different site, but I got that same brand, that same top level link there. Now, while I'm in the sales and marketing site, I've got search this site. If I return back to that top level work landing page, you'll see that the text there says search across sites. And the reason is, as I search this now, for example, if I look for marketing, it will be searching not just across this main work at Contoso landing page, but also the other sales and marketing sites. If we go down a little bit, you'll see there's some other ones like HR's picking up there. So it's just searching across all of your hub. And this is a really big reason, as well as navigation, but to set up your hub sites so that people can search within those contexts. Again, I've still got the I can still go to that wider organization. So I'm searching within that hub. I can very easily use a breadcrumb to jump back. I can apply my filters and all the other good pieces here. And I can look at things I've updated in the past month. I have been updating some stuff in there and look at the different things there. So you've got that access to be able to go through and search in the context that you need to. Those of you who have been looking at SharePoint search for a while and using SharePoint are sitting there going, that's very nice, a few nice tweaks. I like the context side of things, but it looks very similar to things I've been able to do in SharePoint for many, many years. Is that it? Not much has actually felt like it's changed. And hopefully, for those of you who are starting to drift off a little bit, now is where the differences are. This is where you'll see what Microsoft Search is bringing. I'm going to go into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and under Settings, you'll see there's Search and Intelligence. Recently added intelligence on there, so I had to update a whole load of my slides from that one, which is always nice when Microsoft drop those ones on you. From here, you've got a nice dashboard that shows you what looks like your top searches, and those of you who look after the admin side are thinking, brilliant, I can get some across-the-board analytics. I don't want to get you too excited, because when you look at this, I've been using this tenant quite a bit, and I can see that there's only 2 search results, which is a little bit rubbish. And the reason is, if you hover on this eye, that this is impression data provided by Microsoft Search in Bing. What this means is if I go into this new tab, and in fact, I can do it straight from here, and I search for requirements. I'm using Bing as my backdrop. What you'll see is there's, if I search, I'll get everything, but I get this bit that pops up there, and says see personalized work results right on Bing. If I scroll down here, let's just accept that so you can see there, I can see requirements and I can see the definition as if I went to Bing or Google or the sort of results. But now I've got this tab along the top that says work. Because I've signed in with my account here, I'm signed into Bing and I'm getting my Microsoft search results here right there in Bing. Those same project requirements docs and the other ones that I saw on there are all available, and all the different details, and it even gives you some hints and tips, so you get a really good experience. Those verticals have become horizontals, but still give the same capability that I can look for people. So if you remembered something happened, you can't remember if it's internal, you can't remember if it's external, here's a way of being able to go and filter through the different results from right within Bing. And where this is particularly useful is because when you do a new tab, if you've got that Bing part there, you've got that search straight away, easy to access. That's the good news. The bad news is that these search statistics only come from people doing that. So if people are still using that search within SharePoint, within the Office.com portal, you're not really getting any analytics out from that yet, which I hope something will change for that. Don't know anything's coming, but it'd be really nice to get some more centralized analytics to come through. Just on here, I'm very quickly going to have a look at the configuration, and that's where you can enable the Microsoft Search in Bing settings, so you can choose whether you want people to be able to search from within Bing. You may want to turn that off. You also have the option to enforce Bing as a default search setting. If you really want to upset half your stuff, then you can do that. So have a look at that one. What I'm going to focus on more today for now is the answers. And there's some really nice points here. If I start with the acronyms along here, you can see you can define some acronyms. GHB being grey hat beard, for example. NSFW, never saved file in Word. It's not what you're thinking. And you can add ones very easily. So if I click on an acronym, and I always get this wrong, I think this is the MC South Coast UG. I hope I've got that acronym right. What does it stand for? The Microsoft, and I can never remember what the C is, South Coast user group. A fantastic user group of people in the UK and beyond. You can say where it comes from, so you can put a link of where you've got that definition, and you'll notice, apologies, I've stacked my screen so I have to lean slightly at the moment. You can either save that to draft or you can publish it straight away, which is what I'm going to do here, and you get that acronym of it. Well, I say publish straight away, it will take a little bit of time. As with many things in search, it will go through and actually pick up and get added to the indexes and take a bit of time, so I won't be able to demo that straight away. If I look at the status, you can see that you can add things in, you can see the things that's kept in draft, and you can actually exclude some acronyms. So if you wanted to remove some, maybe you had a periodic one, you can exclude it and bring it back without having to delete it on there. And you see, you can sort, you can look at the different sources. You can, if you've got a lot of them, you can search within this admin screen and add different things there. So really nice way of getting that. For those who come from SharePoint, again, the best bets are now known as bookmarks. And if we click on add, we can add a new bookmark. So let's call this again the South Coast user group. Put a URL in there, which I should have to hand, but let's just put grey hat beard in there for now, because that's where you should be going to find out all the favorite podcast details. Now you'll notice as I type, it's actually updating the top here. And you can see that as I type, we're getting the view as it's appearing on the top. And this is what people will see in the search results. So you can get an idea on what it looks like as you type it. You can add some keywords. So we can add user group on there. I'm just hitting enter to add that. If I search for Microsoft 365, if I search for great events, I can add those user group, those different keywords, and you can also add some reserved ones. So if I take user group off there and I add user group into this one, what this means is that no one else can add user group for any of these other bookmarks. So if someone searches for user group, you can guarantee it will only return this result. You can add some categories. These are really only there to help you filter and find things from the details. But as I scroll down, it gets more interesting with these blocks. If you have, say, Christmas coming up or various other religious events, you can actually get your bookmark to appear between a certain start and end date. Maybe you have an event happening and you want people when they search for that to get that bookmark. But as soon as that event's finished, just in case you don't remember to remove that bookmark, you can set an end date for it. Or you can set a start date. Maybe you've got something go live and you want people to know when that goes live. You can set the start date there. If you're working for a multinational, maybe that go live date only happens in a specific country. You can add it for specific countries and regions, and you can see the drop down of lists that you can add in there. And you will see the different languages coming through as well. You can add groups. So to find your Microsoft 365, your security groups, if people go in there, maybe IT will see one thing, finance will see a different thing. Depending on the device they're coming at. Maybe if someone searches for apps, if they're looking from desktop, you'll get one set of apps. If they're coming from a mobile device, you get a different set of apps. You've got targeted variations. So depending on how people look at it, you can change how it looks. And my favorite for all you Power Platform people, you can actually put a Power App embedded within your search results. So if you put the app ID in there, I'm actually going to jump out of this one and show one of the ones here. So for example, the Help Desk app here, if I click on that, you'll see it will actually show within the results the Power App loaded there in the page. You can see it's picked up the URL on there. I've defined some keywords such as help, IT, tickets, help desk. Let's go over and have a look at office.com and let's try and search for help. What did I say? Help desk, sorry. And let's have a look, and I need to remember to put it as all. And there we go. You can see that it's brought, by looking for help desk, it's brought back the help desk result. And there is the actual Power App starting to load. I'm getting the top part of it. If I click on Open App, there I can see it. And because I'm an admin, I can either log in as a user or as an admin. So I'm going to go in as a user and I can log my ticket. No jumping out to other pages, no going elsewhere. I can start to use that Power App, whatever it is, right there from within Microsoft Search. Makes it easy for your users. They don't have to go and read a page about how to do things, click on 10 different links, log in 5 different accounts. There, straight from the search results, you can actually get your Power App there doing things, logging a ticket, booking leave, whatever it is that you want. And they get the beauty. So all the time you spent your Power App is showing there straight away on the screen as well. Really nice feature, that one. Really like that. The other bit, and unfortunately this one doesn't have it. I looked at before, and you could filter by published and draft. You can schedule those ones. The final one here is another great AI powered one. If I filter on suggested, oh, it's actually added some since I last did this. Fantastic. Here are some suggested ones. So this could be things people are searching for, things people are doing. Obviously, there's a lot of people looking at philanthropy in this organization. Definitely not CPS that's coming through from that, but you can see what people are searching for. Probably more likely is people hunting for paycheck, people hunting for expenses. So it's looking at the results coming back and regular things that people do that you can add. So rather than having to get everything yourself, here's a predetermined, here's the bookmark to expenses. I can go and edit that and add a URL and put all the definition in there. And it's going to be driven by what people are searching for. It's that AI-powered intelligent way of getting search. And that really is some of the big things that you get with Microsoft Search. I'm just going to change that back to the publish so I don't forget that later. I'm going to do this in a slightly different order. Does it in a nice alphabetical, which makes sense, but doesn't make sense of the demo. A couple of other bits here where you have the bookmark, you're searching for a specific phrase. We know more and more people search for things by question. So, for example, how do I search websites? How do I book leave on there? And I can search for leave. If I go and show this on that, I search for leave, it will bring back that Power App, but it will also do slightly different is how do I book leave? It will actually give that answer. So if people are asking regular questions, then you can pick that up as a search result and direct them to the specific page as to where they can go and do the thing they need to do. If it's not a Power App, I mean, why you wouldn't have it as a Power App, I don't know. But if you don't, then you can provide that Q&A answer to people as well. And that's got the same capability of getting the suggested ones, see if it's got any interesting stuff. No, it hasn't picked anything there. But if people are asking regular questions, such as what time does the bus leave? How do I get a parking space? Just for you there, Jan. Then you can add those suggested ones and provide an answer to people directly from there. Look at the other areas, you can add some locations. So for example, the Asia Pac, especially if you're multinational, you can put in the address and you can see it uses big maps and you can get directions. So this is when they search for APAC, or maybe if they search, I've got some other keywords such as Singapore, Asia Pacific, Asia, they can get the different results showing up there. So really nice way of putting, rather than having to have a company page and link with best bets, you can put your locations and make it easy for people to access stuff there. The really nice one that, I'll be honest, I have been struggling to get to work in an effective way, possibly because I don't have any decent floor plans. I've downloaded a free one off the internet, but you can, where you have to find your location, you can actually upload a floor plan. And this is literally taking an AutoCAD file, a DWG file. If I click on that, you can see you can upload there. I've uploaded one file there. You define which floor it is on, and if you've got a posh office, which wing or zone it is. Go on to the next page. It will then extract from that file a set of locations. And you can see here it's got like ST15, ST09, the different desk locations. If you've defined those against your users, I don't remember when I looked for, I think it was Megan was ST01. If you've mapped those together and you've got a bit of magic and quite a lot of luck as far as I can tell, then it will start to map those people together. I'm just going to leave and cancel that. If I have a look for within here for Megan Bowen again, what you'll be able to do is, I believe, click on the office location and it will show you the map within that office and allow you to see where their desk is. So no bringing in what I know in the past, I spent, I think, about 9 months trying to implement a horrific tool from IBM to get this working. We never managed to get the sync of the different data from different places. If you have your data in Azure AD and you've got those AutoCAD files, you can allow people to hunt down your locations. I have seen it working. I'm desperate to try and get working. Keep an eye on Grey Hat Beard Bite Size on our YouTube channel. I'm determined to get this working at some point, and we'll put a video up there when I finally solve what the missing step is on there. But you can effectively, I've seen you can click in the same way you can click on the different locations and it will bring up a map. Now, when I looked at this the weekend, if I looked for Jubilee House, you can see there the results come back and it showed the map. It was also showing the map of the location, and just for demo reasons, that seems to have disappeared again. So still working through that, but the capability is there to put in your floor plans. If you have more time and certainly access to AutoCAD, you can define your own details and set that up. There's a great demo page on how to do it on the Microsoft Docs. It's just not working for me. So quite a few. Oh, the other bit I didn't show was if we have a look for example, define NSFW. There you can see the acronyms coming back and showing the results there. So really, really nice AI-powered capabilities. How am I doing for time, Aaron?
You're all good, I suppose. We've started a couple of minutes late anyway.
Okay, I'll crack on and go through a few of these bits. I'll give a high-level view of these because these start to get onto this slightly developer side. The key part to this now is that with the connectors, this is about the external data. It uses the Microsoft Graph, so you're pulling your external results into the Microsoft Graph, so you can tie it in with a lot of other things. So you can pull in your own data with that. There's 3 ways that you can create them. There are the Microsoft built connectors. So there's a few defined. I think there's 6 or 7 now that are predefined that you can just follow a wizard, click, 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 very easy-ish to do. There are some that are built by partners. So there's a set, I think about 4 or 5 partners who are building some great ones. You can go to them, have a discussion, pay them some money, and they've got the pre-canned things. They will come and implement it in your environment and can connect to that. Or now you can actually build your own, and it's not too bad. So if you have your own custom applications that maybe aren't defined yet by Microsoft and one of the partners hasn't defined, you can even build your own connector and get these results. And I'll show that in a minute. The Microsoft built connectors currently, this was certainly correct as of last week. You've got your data lakes, you've got your SQL, you've got your SQL Server, whether it's on premise or whether it's in the cloud. The kind of Azure DevOps as well is now in there. So the Microsoft things you probably expect to find by Microsoft. You'll notice I skipped one there, which is if you have your own external website, you can also consume that. So maybe you're putting things onto your external website that you want people internally to be able to search. You can very easily connect up to that. If you have an internal media wiki as well, maybe you're running your own stuff. I mean, why you wouldn't use SharePoint, who knows? But if you do have your media wiki and haven't migrated that, you can include the search index from that with the click of a few buttons. And if you're using ServiceNow, whether it's for your knowledge management, whether it's for your service desk, etc., you can connect all that into the search results as well. So people would search for service desk tickets, have the details of that, come back in the search and click and open in ServiceNow very easily. If you're looking at something beyond that, you can see this is just some of the ones that are now available. For those of you who are unlucky enough to still have Lotus Notes, you can include that on there. You can include other ones that I've never heard of or seen before, such as Pyrobase CMS. Have seen and used Alfresco, so another great tool. If you're using Jira, if you're using Confluence, there are connectors, and you can go and see the gallery there. If you look for Microsoft Search and look for connectors gallery, you can go and speak to those partners and purchase a connector for that. If you didn't want to, if you have developers, if you have people comfortable, you can actually build this out yourself as well. And let's have a little look at what that looks like. I'm going to try and keep this a little bit shorter than I have before. If you go into the admin center again, you've got these connectors, and you can see I've defined a few of these already. So I mentioned the enterprise website. I've pulled the Grey Hat Beard Microsoft 365 etiquette repo. We have our repo that's available off the Grey Hat Beard website. Go off the back of a show we had with Maureen Summers. We talked about the etiquette of 365 and said it'd be really nice if we had a single place where we could capture these. So we have, you know, how to do things, for example, in Teams. Should I create a Microsoft Team, a channel or a private channel? Lots of really good, not how you do things, but how you should do things on there. And it's the kind of thing that if people are searching for Teams, you maybe want those results to be able to be searchable. So what I've got in here, if I go and configure that, you can see you can give it a description. You've got a crawl on there, so you can see the last crawl, when it completed, how long it took, how many successes there were, just the one, which doesn't sound the most successful, how big the index is, how much has come back from that, what's been crawled. Maybe if I have a look at my blog, that will have a few extras on there. Yeah, you can see here the crawl, it's actually queried my blog post and got all the blog posts. It's followed all the different links through that. All I've done is configured and put mcd79.com, and it's followed all the links through within that site and added those to the search results. So if I click on McD79 and have a look for, let's try Power Platform. Then there's all my blog posts that come through, and I can click on there and it will open up my blog in a new window. For example, a few years old now, but my thoughts on Build 2017, I talked about the Power Platform, and it's brought those results from indexing that and picked up from the text there, all there as a nice vertical. Only thing that's not quite doing, it's not there in the all results, so you do need to actively select that as a source that you want to use, but you can bring those different bits in there, and you can bring your different context to make it easy for people to search from one place. You can see a couple of other ones there. I've actually set up a Twitter connector. So this one I've created as a custom connection. It's using Azure Logic Apps, that every time someone tweets on Collab Talk, a great community-driven event run by Christian Buckley, it will go and grab those and pull that into the search results as well. So there, it's not even having to index. It's not like on a nightly crawl. As soon as something comes in, because the Logic app will trigger based on that Twitter connector, it will add to the results pretty much straight away. It was still a little bit of time for the indexing, If we have a look at that, you can see there I've searched for Power Platform. It's still got that search result, and it's picked up from Simon Denton. I was a little bit lazy. I haven't put the link to that in Twitter, but it's pulled the answer from that tweet directly in there, and you can configure the different properties. You can render how that shows. If you have a look at my blog, I've got a bit more detail into how to go into that, and we'll be hopefully publishing something up on GitHub with a bit more detail on that as well. So if you're looking into that, hopefully some guides on there which can steer you. Also, the sample that comes with it, I think if we look for fridge, you can actually, this is querying a SQL database. So if you have a parts list, then you can look for all the parts. This is the fridge compressors, and it will tell you the inventory. You can see you've got the different formatting. You can pull different properties and render them in different ways. So you can get those different results coming through all within that same search. And I can jump between the different tabs. You can see how quickly, not too many fridges mentioned in the rest of this, but you can very easily move between those verticals and get those results all from one place. It's about that central hub there. Through the last few slides, the other thing you've got is, for those of you who maybe do a bit of development, is because it's now part of the Microsoft Graph, you can actually connect with it and develop your own things. You can either pull those results back and render them in your own way, or the recommended way is to use the adaptive cards. If you haven't seen adaptive cards, they're in Teams, Power Automate, really give you an easy way of getting those same results back that will look good on different devices, will look good in different platforms like Power Platform as well. And you can even integrate it with Q&A Maker. So if you hadn't put those Q&A into your search results, you could point this at an existing index and get even more on there. And if you're interested in that, I have a single page application demo that is pulling back those results and showing how to do that. So if you go to github.com/KevMcDonk, you'll see it's called the MS Search Bar within that. And that's using the graph to pull the results and it basically came off the back of someone saying, I like this Microsoft Search, but I don't want to use SharePoint. What options do I have? So we end up developing a little POC off the back of that. To wrap up now, what does the future hold? I mentioned earlier that people search was coming, so you can search for a person and then look for the different results coming there. A lot more coming of that with content. Power BI actually is now available within there. So you can search within your Power BI content as well. The other big area there is more skills and more AI-driven recommendations. So seeing a lot more of the AI recommending the kind of results that you want to come through. I think we'll see wide availability for the external connectors. I would imagine you're going to start seeing more and more of the open source community build up these connectors. So those partner ones will be fantastic to give you the absolute rock solid ones. But I think for the simpler and easier, you'll start to see open source ones creeping out there as well and seeing things pulled together as repos that will make available on there. There's going to be more hubs as well. Need to get this into the right order. So we know that Teams is soon going to be powered by Microsoft Search. And when you search in Teams, you're not going to get that awful experience you get at the moment. It will come through that same Microsoft Search results. You're going to see more AI. So when you use Outlook Mobile, you'll be able to search and use voice ones on there. Desktop search has been announced a few times. I don't believe there's a date for it yet, but soon when you search within Windows 10, you'll be able to get the Microsoft Search results coming up as well, and all the different ways to manage that and make sure you've got that context-driven details on there. And then the final one, Project Cortex. Many of you will have heard about this. It's about getting knowledge in your organization in a way that's easy to manage and use AI to pull information automatically out of the documents that are there and make it easy to find, and the knowledge hubs that hopefully will come and be announced soon on there. And a lot of that is powered by Microsoft Search and integrated with that. So there'll be more and more announced supposedly by the end of the year. I'm hoping more to come from that soon. So to wrap on the final ones, the what? You've got that search across Microsoft 365 content, plus your own now with Microsoft Graph, and with all those AI services to find what you want and recommend what you might need. Why? Because you've got that one place, that one index to get your search content from across everything, and how you can access from that search box. You've got results from configuration, and you've got that development capability from Microsoft Graph. 3 different ways to get through and get your data out. I'm going to stop talking now, and I realise I haven't looked to see if there's any questions, but if you do have any questions, please do shout out. I can see Alex asking, answers these like the best bets of old. I think the best bets are more about the bookmarks. So I would say yes, absolutely. The bookmarks within there are like the best bets, and you can have multiple ones of those. Where it's been extended is you've got those acronyms and Q&A, which do similar sort of functionality as well.
Sounds good, Kevin. Nice work. Do you know if they're improving on the custom web parts around search? Because I know that the classic SharePoint search was quite good in the ability to create custom refinement panels and advanced search, and the modern just seems a bit behind.
I think no is the short answer. I don't know of anything definitely coming. If you look at the PNP, if you go to pnp.github.com, there's some great work. Sorry, github.io. There's been some great work, and I'm suddenly forgetting who created it, but somewhere within there, the PNP modern search will give you a nice way to get that customization. You can use handlebars to, you can see here, you can change the results and render it in different ways. It gives you a great way of filtering that. However, that is just SharePoint search, so that's not pulling from across everything. If I had more time, I would definitely look to see if we can use the Microsoft Graph now to try and render that more, but I don't think it's quite there yet.
Cool. Cool. All right. Cheers. Thank you.
If anyone does any question, at Kev McDonk on Twitter, definitely give me a shout.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I guess if nobody's got any questions, we'll move straight into your session, Derrick.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks, Kevin. That was awesome. That was really good. Love search. It can only get better as well. I think we've been doing quite a lot of work with Microsoft on syntax, and I think there's going to be a lot of really cool kind of auto classification, probably pumping straight into search, which will be really interesting. Right. Okay. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for attending and agreeing to speak.
I don't feel too much of an infiltrator because I used to live in Bournemouth, so I'm going to take that as a belonging and validation for being here. But yeah, so my name is Derrick Lakin-Smith. I kind of came up with a concept over, I guess, many years of frustration with basically talking to people, customers, colleagues, just people I know, around the struggle people have with getting to grips with, well, Microsoft 365, Office 365, SharePoint, all that kind of stuff. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could introduce some sort of like base level, like a driving license, where we could basically say, if everyone knew at least this much, you could start the conversation at the same place. So I work for a company called Agilisys. We're a Microsoft partner. We deal almost exclusively with public sector organizations, councils, police, health, so on and so on. And obviously with the public sector, they, I think more than the most, definitely have a wide demographic of users. So the idea behind this was really about kind of coming up with a way of kind of bringing everyone on board, getting those base level. I think when we start to have conversations with customers, we kind of reach for the stars, we get excited about the capabilities, and quite often there's this like blank look kind of going, yeah, that sounds amazing, but we are like nowhere near that. I can't even conceive what that might look like. So I worked on a sort of day-long course, in effect, which would kind of get underneath the skin of what people do, what everyone does, instead of like, you're looking at personas, looking at project managers, looking at how we do these things. It's like, what about the core things that everybody does? And is there a way that we can maybe get everyone to that same point? So this is where the connected employees concept was born. And what I've had to do here, which I didn't realize how hard it was going to be, is condense it into 30 minutes. So I might have to speak quite quickly. So I'm just going to quick obligatory introduction slide. Derrick Lakin-Smith. I head up the Microsoft 365 content and collaboration platform team at Agilisys, and that covers the whole shebang from Teams, SharePoint, StreamX, whatever it might be, basically. Lots of data migrations, lots of sort of foundational building blocks. Do you have Active Directory synced to Azure, for instance? That kind of stuff. So previously worked at Microsoft, Capgemini, Deloitte, CPS, interestingly. I know Al. That was a while ago. So yeah, that's me. I can be reached on LinkedIn and Twitter. I don't really blog. I'm way too busy, and I should blog, and I know that, and I feel bad. So where do we start? What I like to see, one of the challenges as consultants, as technologists, as engineers, as techies, is a lot of our life seems to kind of be on the org side. So we focus around the IT, comms, security, compliance, keeping the lights on, SLAs, service desk, all that kind of stuff. And I think sometimes there's a disconnect between what we think or what we've been tasked, what the project says that we are there to deliver, and actually what people are trying to achieve, what the benefit, what the organization actually needs to achieve. And I thought, okay, so how do we remember these people's needs when we're planning, when we're looking at technology, how we consider the people who are being affected by this change? So obviously there's a lot of work that's being done around change and adoption, and that's very, very powerful. And not meant as a criticism, but I think sometimes that happens a little bit too late. It sometimes gets plugged on the end. We'll do some videos, we'll point people at a hub. And I think that can also create friction when a new product is rolled out. And I think that's really important to consider. So this really is about trying to remember the poor people at the other end of our cool tech and how we service them, how we make sure that they are getting what they want, and also fundamentally what we want them to have, because that's also our goal. So I am on a mission to strike the word user from my vocabulary. I fail miserably every single day, but I think we have this tendency of kind of dehumanizing almost. We kind of call them end users and the user base, and there's only other one scenario where users are used, and it's not a particularly happy one. So I think what that actually helps us do is it helps us reshape and reframe where we're coming from and what we're trying to achieve. It helps us keep their needs in mind. I do actually have a tendency of trying to redefine terms. I tried to write an entire deck on SharePoint without using the word collaboration. I failed, admittedly, but I thought it was a really good thought experiment. So, but what I tried to do is I tried to think about community and effectiveness rather than collaboration and productivity, because I think sometimes we just gravitate towards the term, and all of the baggage that kind of comes with it, we kind of almost sometimes inherit. So what this basically means for us, we're looking at the democratization and consumerization of IT, computing, mobile devices, apps, cloud, SaaS, whatever you want to call it. But I think what that's actually done is also created a different organization. It's created a different demographic. When the people come into work, they go, right, I got Twitter, I got WhatsApp, I've got all these messaging apps, so I can do whatever I want with everyone I know, but I can't do it at work. Not a new problem, but I think it becomes more and more relevant in the times that we're also currently going through. So I think it's kind of our responsibility to strike a balance, basically. We know this. It's a case of, do we lock it down? How much do we lock it down? How much enablement and trust do we give the people who are actually going to be trying to do their job? So the challenge with not striking a balance is, if I can't use it, I will find another way. And that's, again, not a new problem. It's something that we've been struggling with. So what do? We lock stuff down. We lock USB ports down. We lock websites down at the firewall, which is an approach. Interestingly, as more people are working remotely, there is no firewall half the time. We're going straight to the cloud. We are working on devices, bring your own devices, etc. So we really need to, I think, change our relationship with what we're trying to do with the people. So basically, trying to balance out usability with security, compliance, enforcement, etc., is really important. And for anyone who may remember, this person in the slide is actually leaving Windows Phone to Android for that very reason. So when it comes to Office 365, it's complex. It's simple and it's flexible, which seems like a contradiction, but it actually is. And that's one of the challenges things we're always having to deal with. So what we need to do is try to, I think, take this to its simplest form. We look at what people want to do as people, not as users, not as SharePoint end users or Teams users, but just as regular people. So what I like to think about is how we define ourselves, as a employee, as a colleague, as a team member, and how we create that sort of persona and that personality. Because we all work with masks. We all work with who we are at home, who we are down the pub, who we are at work. And recognizing all these different ways of working and who we are and how we interact with other people, I think, is crucial to getting the right approach to getting products out there, getting people embracing what we are showing them as technical solutions, but also sort of an enablement. So, excuse me. So how do we begin to define ourselves as a persona? And how do we engage with people as that persona? And how do we get personal value from that? So I'm going to stop going on about personas and start thinking about what that means as a person. And this is unashamedly non-technical, because that's actually the point, is when people enter their job. I like to think, or I always like to think about this, or frame this around a new starter. How does that person identify? How does that person connect? How does that person start building their tribe? And I think there's some crucial building blocks. I think there's some crucial things that we basically, I think everyone could really benefit from. Just a starting point to get them up and running. So start talking about Office 365 then, shall I? So my profile exists within Delve, let's say. Delve, obviously not Microsoft's greatest moment. Lack of, I think, communication. A lot of people paranoid and insecure about the security element. And I think it's kind of tarnished it. But there are some useful elements in Delve. Mainly your profile enables you to define who you are. It says, obviously, who your line manager is, what department you work in, but also individual things which are relevant to you, what your skills are, what projects you've worked on, what your interests are. And going back to Kevin's talk, this obviously all surfaces up in that search capability. It also pops up around different places in the profile cards sometimes. And again, this is one of the inconsistencies which creates confusion with the people actually using it. But I'm not going to get too bogged down in the challenge. So when we define ourselves in our profile, it's easy to communicate. It's easy to say, new starter, hey, jump into here, tell us a bit about yourself. It's like an icebreaker to the organization. And I've certainly deployed solutions in the past where that becomes part of an intranet. First time you log in, you get a nice little pop-up saying, here we go, fill out these fields, and behind the scenes, it'll publish that to your profile. Makes it super easy, and it starts everyone on that level playing field. The next element of who we are and how we fit in, I think, is really the org chart. Org charts are interesting beasts. One company I worked at, the org chart was the most closely guarded secret and document in the entire organization. It was classed as top secret because people didn't want to know, the company didn't want external people to know how they were structured and what that meant from a competition and sort of things like that. And also it's constantly changing. And until basically people were told this is your new reporting structure, it was again kept top secret. But what it does do is it does two things. It shows someone else your context within an organization. It shows who you report to. It shows your seniority. It shows who your peers are. It shows maybe something like if you need to find some information out and you're not available, who else may be able to help them. It shows what the reporting structure is. So I think there's a lot of context which kind of comes from an org chart, which seems really simple or irrelevant in some cases. I don't know if you've sort of seen the conversation around banning just saying hello in chat, because hello is there's no context. It's an interruption with no purpose. And if someone pings you and says hi, you jump back and you wait. Are you supposed to say hi back? Do you do the small talk? And this happens more frequent than I think we probably like to imagine. Someone says hi, gets pinged by someone else, gets distracted, and then goes on something else, and you're just left there hanging. So you don't know maybe who they are. So it's good to go and say, oh, who is this person? What's their job title? What department they work in? Really, really useful, quite powerful, and actually solves quite a lot of problems when it comes to finding ourselves within an organization and finding, what the context is. Also, I would say, don't just say hi. Say, hi, how are you doing? Oh, quick question, blah, blah, blah. Carry on, get it out there, start the conversation. That's just a personal thing. The other often underutilized opportunity, I think, is your signature in email. I know we're all moving away from email. We're moving towards, Teams and chats and stuff, but email is not really going anywhere anytime soon. So again, it's your introduction when you send an email to someone, either when you're instigating the conversation or when you're replying. It gives them information about who you are. I think it also gives you opportunity to have kind of contextual or time-sensitive information without spamming people. So you can say, oh, but by the way, I'm off end of December, or we're just launching a new product, check out our latest blog post. So again, it helps create context around who you are and what you do, and opportunities to kind of introduce yourself to people. So just going into the org chart piece, so we all know Teams, we all probably spend most of our life there. What not a lot of people who use it on a day-to-day basis know is the power of who. And just by simply typing in /who in the search bar enables you to pull back rich seams of information about people. It's a Microsoft app, so the trust is there, and it provides some really good information about who people are, who they report to, org chart. Also additional information, like you can ask who does what or who knows about something. The other thing is it gives you a nice view of your upcoming meetings and who you've got meetings with. So if you're thinking maybe you need to have a catch up with someone, you can have a quick look in here and say, actually, I'm going to be seeing them or having a meeting with them on Tuesday. So I'll leave it until that sort of time. So MySpace, no, not that one. We've moved on. We've moved on from there, thankfully. So what I like to call MySpace is where I spend my time, what this means to me. it's mine, it's me, it's all about it. So it all comes down to it's all about me. I care about myself and I care about my tribe, but fundamentally that's kind of my drive every day when I turn on my computer. It's like, okay, what does this mean to me? So email isn't going anywhere. Outlook still provides a number of really useful sort of benefits, but I think it's also important to understand the limitations. And I think people basically sitting there with their Outlook client open all the time, waiting for that next email to come in, can also be a little bit limited and tied to it. So great tool, but I don't think it should be the workspace that a lot of people still are tied to. And I think the ways that we can move around that or away from that is basically using it as like a holding space, like a hanger. Things come in and then they go out again, either as a response or as an archive. Is keep that email moving. Do not use it as a filing cabinet. So I think some of the integrations that have come into Outlook, I think really help us break away from Outlook and move to the places where it's more natural to exist. Teams is obviously the prime example. It's the hub for collaboration, the hub for work, the hub for apps, the hub for getting all the information in. So it makes sense to move into that from your Outlook. So the ability to send an email into a team. Say, okay, that's done, or I need to share this with the rest of the team. There's obviously some disconnect there, but it's a really good way of getting that information into the place where it should be, where the conversations happen. I think the other thing is actions, using Planner and To Do more with, getting that again out of that Outlook workspace and into the place where it more naturally resides. So having to say, hey, here's a task, remember to do this thing. Flagging an email, obviously that triggers the task, but flagging, I've always found a little bit, it's kind of just a bucket, just one big bucket. So obviously the to-do capabilities provide a lot more rich context to that actual activity and action that you need to carry out. One thing I find really interesting is the disconnect between Outlook on the desktop and Outlook on the web. I sometimes go into Outlook on the web. It's not natural for me because, again, I'm one of those people who've grown up with Outlook desktop and still a bit tied to it. But sometimes go in there because there's some really cool things in there. So for instance, if you highlight just a phrase or a sentence in an email, a little to-do icon pops up and you can just add that phrase into a to-do, which I think is really, really powerful, because when you've got a big chain of emails, or if you've got a lot of text in there, but it's just one piece of relevance, it's really powerful just to take that piece. And when you're in To Do, it also provides a link directly back to that email. So you can just say, okay, right, I know I need to do that. Now I need to respond to that email. Jump straight back. It's a lot more seamless. So again, these kind of sort of behaviors, it's about really getting people just to understand the really basic, simple objectives, tasks, and ways of using the simple tools which are put in front of them on a daily basis. Going to quickly jump onto the calendar. It does often define us. We sit there. I remember, again, anecdote alert. I used to, when I was growing up, I spent a summer working on a farm, and the job I had was to pick wild oats out of a cornfield. So you go along with the big bag and anyone's we see. And the farmer's wife was very kind of like one of those wise ladies. And she always says, you young people, you're always waiting for something. The time means, you're waiting for something to happen rather than just living on a farm. The time of day is about, what it means to you rather than waiting for the next thing. And I think it's really quite interesting that how we can break free from time defining us, time defining what our limitations are, or what block we have to do with. So my thought around calendaring and meeting management is quite wide and complex, but I think there are things we can do naturally to free ourselves from that. I'm hoping we're all aware of all the work Microsoft are doing around well-being and reducing burnout and fatigue. So looking at things like time blocking, lunch breaks, every lunch break, focus time, and this virtual commute, which they're bringing in, things like that, where we basically look at just ways of managing our time a little bit better. So I'm just going to speed up a little bit because I'm babbling. So Teams is and isn't the answer. We know we can jump into Teams and it's great. It has so many rich kind of tools, features, functionality, calls, video, chat, files. We can do a lot of stuff there, but there's still a lot of things we have to jump out and quite jarringly get jumped out of Teams into a browser because it's not fully integrated yet. And as for the intranet, I think personally Teams is replacing a vast list of requirements which we used to say this is what we want our intranet to do. So I think it's again looking about how we define these things. Is an intranet just where corporate comms sends you the latest organizational news, or is it more dynamic? Moving on to my content, again, still about me, care about my stuff. So the interesting thing about my content is when I say my content, I don't mean stuff which just belongs to me. It's stuff that I have a relationship with. It's contextual to me. Someone else may own it, someone else may create it, someone else may manage it, but it's something which impacts my daily life. So I shouldn't really care where it is, who owns it, if it's in a SharePoint site, if it's in a OneDrive. It's really about trying to flatten that expectation of how we actually find content. I'm not going to even try to tackle that one on this one because we don't have 3 days. So SPO is Teams, SharePoint Online is Teams, but it's not, as we all know. We have to have sites, we have multiple ways of using SharePoint for various things, a lot more things than just putting some files behind a chat. So it's about, trying to level this complexity. When we go in and we speak to a person who's just trying to use this stuff and try to explain, the structure of a Microsoft 365 group and the security in the permissions and the membership, yeah, we've lost them already. So again, it's around trying to level these things down and use different capabilities. Search obviously is one. I think syntax will go a long way to also trying to level these things as well. And one of the frustrating things around intelligent suggestions or Office 365 bringing stuff to you is most of it is driven by what was recently used. That's just one of many signals, and I think it's interesting that we're still not getting enough signals to basically say what is it I'm actually looking for. And when we're talking about content, videos and images, we're becoming larger consumers of videos and images, not just because of the bandwidth in our phones and devices, but also because AI is making them more contextual, more relevant. We can search, we can say there's a dog in this one, because there's always a dog in an image when you use it as an example. So I have 3 dogs, so it's always a relevant thing to me as well, because most of my images do have dogs in. And then obviously the massive change that Microsoft just announced around Stream, and obviously how that becomes more challenging. It's not really about that specifically, but it's about when Microsoft make new platform changes like that, is how we again simplify those changes for the people using the platform. Can we make it simpler? Can we make it easier for them to understand and use? My favorites, oh my. So stuff that I want to keep, stuff I want to find again. How do I manage that? It's still, it's still frustrating. When you look around Office 365 and a wider suite of products, every surface has a different way of storing or favoriting or bookmarking or creating a folder or a board or whatever it might be. And again, that's really, I think, confusing and challenging for people. Some of these things can be resolved with the graph. because there is an endpoint. Some can't because there isn't. So I think, again, simplifying, instructing, guiding people along a standard approach. And the more we do the standard approach, the easier it is for people to work together as well, because everyone's using that standard approach. So obviously we can save messages in Teams, we can pin in Office.com, and I spent a little bit of time trying to figure out what that actually means. When you go to Office.com, your homepage, which is basically replacing Delve, I would say, feel free to disagree with me on that one. You have your recent file list, and then you have pinned, then you have shared and various other things. But in the pinned list, there's nothing there, obviously, because you haven't pinned anything. But how do you pin stuff in the first place? And discovered that if you look at your recent files, you get a little pin icon, and you can pin that to your Office.com homepage, which is fab as a concept, but it's not scalable. You can't categorize, you can't label, you can't filter, etc. I've seen Microsoft's own internal version of that, and you can do a lot more. So hopefully we'll see a lot more coming to that space. Save for later is, again, a weird, really weird one, because it should have come out. It should be everywhere. There should be a little hover icon over most files, which basically says save for later. But at the moment, you can really, or I can only really access it for pages in websites, in SharePoint intranet sites. And I just want to say the last thing on this one is something I do personally, is using To-Do religiously. So To-Do is my dumping ground. The reason why I use To-Do is because if I'm reading an article, I think, oh, that's really interesting. I haven't got time to consume it all now. I'm going to save that for later. I literally just go, because I'm normally reading it on my phone, I'll just go share, and I'll share it to my To-Do, and I'll put it into my read later To-Do list. There is no, as I say, there's no simple way which brings all this together. And I think that's, again, which causes confusion for people. Right, I'm going to speed up again. Right, my time is about how I spend my time, and my time is literally belongs to me. And I think it's important that we take control and ownership of what that means, because it is yours to give. It's not always possible. There's always going to be people who demand and enforce giving your time. But I think it's something which we have a tendency to take for granted. And I think that's something which is really important now. We kind of take back. And again, this comes to the next point, which is create space to think. Big fan of focus. Time without distractions, turn the internet off, turn the music off or on, depending on how you focus. But I think it's really important to assign and allocate time for focus. And part of focusing is actually unfocusing. It's called unfocused, but what it means is basically letting your mind wander. I think probably mindfulness and sort of stuff like that is around that kind of unfocused kind of thing. But it's really going for a walk, just letting your mind wander. Do the Hoover, cook a cake, you know, these kind of things actually help you sort of let your mind wander a little bit and actually find a lot more solutions than when you are really forcing ourselves to try to think about a solution or force it out. And this is a favorite one of mine, is basically don't attend meetings. But you can't just not attend meetings. So I think I quite like to encourage people to record meetings, because that means anyone who isn't able to attend for whatever reason is able to also look back and refer to anything that was discussed, especially when they're being given actions because they're the one who isn't in the meeting. Very common. And there is some new functionality coming to Teams around meeting spaces, which again will do a recap and bring all the stuff together. And I think there's some really interesting and useful things coming around that. Obviously, with recordings, big files, there's GDPR potential issues, there's retention period issues, it's not just a case of simple on or off. But I think it's really important to at least consider that around the new structure. The other thing is drive behavior, use your signature, use what it is you do around getting other people to try to take the same approach. And again, because I just squeezed so much of stuff into 30 minutes, I've kind of like really done a abridged version. So really, this is the only bit I kind of look at the wider, what about us? What about us as a team? And something I find really interesting is small, incremental, but frequent communication is better than any other type of communication. Two reasons for that. One is too much communication generally creates a sort of confirmation bias almost. It's you reach consensus too quickly. It's right, quick, everyone, talk, right, consensus, yeah, great, move on. The other side of the thing is if you don't talk at all, don't communicate with the team, then people just go into their own heads and kind of say, well, there's not much point, or everyone comes up with different ideas. And the other side of your persona is meetings are really personal. Your voice, your tone, your face, your background, what you're wearing. It's something which defines our personality. It's something which I think is also not really considered very much. I think, again, standardize the approach if you can, and see if there are ways of finding that common ground. Again, focus time. I keep putting this external sharing should be turned on because I think it should be turned on. A lot of people want to turn it off, but if you turn it off, you go back to that thing. If you stop people from doing something, they'll find a way of doing it outside of your visibility, your monitoring, your audit, and that will obviously create all of the shadow IT implications. So approach, how do we do this? It's about creating like a foundational approach to enabling connected organizations. It's not about Office 365. It's about the people. It's about how we actually treat each other. It's how we connect with each other. We start with everyone on the same page. Again, as I say, if everyone does just this basic stuff the same way, the collaboration, the cohesion, and the ways of working evolve naturally. Get simple, like really, really simple. You easily define what's in it for me. With them. Love that term because it really helps us know that we're going to struggle. Collaboration has always been a thing. It's really beneficial. You know, everyone's going to have all this great stuff available if you collaborate. It's like, well, if I don't, then I got all my stuff and I'm fine. So it really helps kind of get past that question. Remove the what you use when question because we create some really simple scenarios. We say just day-to-day life. This is how we live. This is what we do. This is where we gravitate towards. And then people have their own opportunity once they've got that base level. Everyone's on equal pegging to then find their own ways of doing things and then manage that evergreen a bit better because they are. It doesn't matter if change comes in because they've got their base level. It's not as disruptive if people are doing things a different way or if they're still experimenting and something changes on the platform. So a completely off the wall idea and thought I had is basically create everyone one team for them and only them and call it me. And use that as that place where you store everything. Send all your links in there. If you've got, you know, if you do expenses at the moment, probably the expenses claims are going down significantly. But if you only do it once a month, where is that expense claim? We used to use the intranet, but the intranet is going away slowly but surely. Use My Analytics. Let it define your focus time. Let it define your lunch time. Let it help you understand your day better. It's not about your boss looking at how productive you are. It's about you maximizing your time, understanding your pattern, your behavior, and making decisions based on that. Etiquette and behavior follows culture, generally. But etiquette and behavior can define and influence culture too. So as people change, so will culture. Well-being is not new, it's just more relevant because of obviously stress at the moment, working longer hours, being in more meetings. But if and when things go back to some semblance of normality, let's keep that genie out of the bottle. Let's keep focusing on that. Create baseline digital skills. These are the building blocks. That's really kind of where I started this whole journey for. I did this because I wanted teachers locally in my little town to be able to use the tools that they've got better to support the students, because my daughter's a student. So again, what's in it for me? This all comes from a selfish perspective. There are also some apps ready-made or deployable to actually help us on their way. Company Communicator, Microsoft app template. I installed it in 20 minutes. Gives you a good way of getting communication information out to everyone within Teams. Icebreaker, it's quite cute. It's a random matchmaking. Hey, why don't you guys just randomly pick 2 people, work together for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever. Who I've already mentioned. Yammer. We always forget about poor old Yammer, but it is getting better. Now with obviously better integration with Teams, I think we can do more with Yammer. I think build better communities, because I think we can all see there's more need for that at the moment. If you haven't used calendar.help, it's a Microsoft research project, uses Cortana to help arrange meetings. So for instance, if I send an email to 3 of my colleagues or friends or whoever, and I CC Cortana, and I say, Cortana, can you arrange a meeting for us next Tuesday for about an hour? It will take information from my calendar automatically, because I've already given it permission, and it will suggest some times to my colleagues to say, Derrick wants to meet up on this day for half an hour. Oh, I can see that you're free at these times. Or maybe you can suggest a time. And what it does, it goes backwards and forwards until consensus is met. It's very similar to Find Time, but apart from the fact that Find Time is basically a voting. But again, that's also quite helpful about managing time, especially when you're dealing with external people, clients, or anyone who you don't have access to their calendar view. My Analytics, big benefits by My Analytics, because it looks at and understands how you work, and maybe gives you some good suggestions on how you can work better. And the last one is Bookings, which I think is actually something which could be really useful internally as well. I know it's designed as a small business tool for window cleaners and hairdressers, as I like to say, but I think it also can actually help you say, look, I'm going to publicize to support desk, or if you want to say to clients that I've got some time just to offer you a workshop, can be really helpful. So that's me. I've talked very quickly and probably for too long. And now the question is, am I still on Teams? Is my microphone still working? And am I still actually here?
Yeah, Derrick, you're on mute.
Thanks.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much. There's quite a few comments in there as well. Kevin, Chris, and Nathan, I think, had a few. So, we're liking that. So yeah, sounds good. Thank you. All right, I'm just cautious of time. Tom, you good to go?
I am. I can. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Let's do it. Hello,
Thanks,
everyone. Yes, thanks very much, Derrick. That was awesome. Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm going to just cover off quickly what looks like the first question will be, why does it look like you're standing on garage? Because I'm standing in my garage. Due to times of bedtimes and where the study is and all that sort of stuff, it was just easier. So that's where I am. That's the reason for the backdrop. The only other reason for mentioning it is because I'm doing all this on a laptop. So I'm going to be doing a couple of transitions and demos and stuff. So I'm just going to say, bear with me if it's not quite as slick as you might normally expect. But we'll get through it somehow. All right, so going to be talking about Microsoft Teams, going to talk about applications. Probably going to dance about a bit because it's 7 degrees outside and I'm pretty sure it's 7 degrees in this garage. So we've talked already. The other speakers tonight have also mentioned applications in Microsoft Teams. Teams has come up on both those talks, and it's been really interesting to see what's happening with Teams at the moment. It's becoming the hub for work, and it's that central place where, I was going to say users, but let's say people interact with Microsoft 365, and that is entirely by design. It is not a happy accident on Microsoft's part. This is a journey that they are on. It is a very deliberate journey to bring data to people where they are collaborating and communicating. That whole story about how Microsoft got to where they are now is an entire all by itself, which is kind of interesting. How they all got it wrong, and now I think are getting it right. But how does it actually affect us today and the things that we're going to be talking about today? Well, in order for that strategy that Microsoft have of bringing everything into Teams and making Teams the hub. In order for that to succeed, Microsoft have to provide tools for developers and more so non-developers to bring that other information into Teams. Even Microsoft will acknowledge that all of the data and the information and the process flows that users need, not all of that always lives in the Microsoft 365 stack of the top 5 apps that already are integrated in Microsoft Teams, right? So they have to they have to provide developers good tools to let that happen. If you're feeling more cynical, the other way of looking at that is the more apps you have in Teams, the more engagement you have in Teams, the more people you have using Teams, and apps keep Teams sticky. And so there's been a real explosion in the past few years in capability for what people can do, what developers can do on Teams. And that could be quite confusing if you're coming into this cold. It can be quite confusing if you're not a developer. It can be quite off-putting. And you might kind of come away thinking this isn't, there's this whole landscape of developing apps on Teams and it's just for developers. I'm going to try and tell you that is not at all true. I'm going to go through the big 3 development areas where you kind of do things that interact with Teams and show you things that developers can do, show you things that IT pros can do, non-developers, and also trying to blur this line a bit because there is a big kind of divide between developers and non-developers, and I think it's a bit misplaced because lots of people think they're not developers, and then I ask them if they do PowerShell. Oh yeah, of course I do PowerShell. Well, you are a developer then. You just don't think you are. So if there's lots and lots of entry points basically. And then in the end, I'm going to quickly cover app templates as well because I think they're awesome and they're a really good way of jump starting. And I'm going to keep it fairly crisp as well so that we can sort of finish sort of not too late as well. So 3 big areas: Microsoft Graph APIs, the Teams UI and experience, and bots. And I'm going to cover each of those and then talk about app templates. So let's start right at the beginning. So this is primarily kind of aimed more at developers, but it's really, I think, useful for like non-developers who don't even plan to do any development to listen in and just understand the landscape, because more and more this stuff is becoming democratized. But if you don't understand the why and the building blocks and all the rest of it, it makes less sense. So Microsoft Graph, obviously big repository of different APIs, and many of those APIs interact with Microsoft Teams. Mostly it's lifecycle management stuff. So creating a team, updating a team, adding things, removing things from Teams, deleting Teams at the end, installing apps, archiving it, all that sort of stuff. It's all based around the Azure AD application model. So that's exactly the same as everything else in kind of Microsoft 365 now and all of Azure. This idea of an application that has permissions and secrets, has admin oversight and control. It's exactly the same model. There's 2 different ways of calling there's 2 different ways of calling Graph APIs when it comes to permissions. There's user delegated permissions and there's application permissions. User delegated permissions operate in the scope of the user whose permission you are acting on behalf of. So normally you're doing that, or if you're kind of interacting with an application that does that, it's the sort that makes you log in. So it pops up a login box, asks you to accept and authorize whatever permissions, and then it will do things, and it's doing them on your behalf. So they show up in the audit log as coming from you. Separately to that, application permissions, they don't require a user to be present. So they are much better for runs every night in the background sort of tasks, polls on the hour, sort of tidies up some things. Much wider in scope in a way, like they're not tied by the same permission set that a user delegated permission is. So user delegated permissions can only do the same things that users can, whereas an application permission kind of has much wider rights. All of those permissions are all managed in Azure, and there's a couple of gotchas because not all of the API calls have parity between what you can do with user delegated permissions and what you can do with application permissions. So it's worth just understanding the difference between them, first of all, which one is right for you, and then seeing what's available. The good news is the docs for Graph are really, really good. So all of the calls that you go and look at in Graph, it'll tell you exactly what permissions you need. If you want to go and create a team, you need a very specific permission set called teams.create.all or something. And you can do that as a user, or you can do it as an application. In fact, right now you can only do it as a user. Something else that's worth knowing is something very specific to Microsoft Teams called resource-specific consent. This is the idea that adding and removing users from Teams is something that people like to want to automate. And that permission is quite a powerful permission. So if you want to have an application that occasionally adds some users to one team that you have, normally you'd have to go and grant that application permission to modify users across your entire tenant. And for a lot of IT admins, the answer to that is no. What resource-specific consent does is allow the owners of a specific team to authorize that application to perform those actions just on the bounds of that team. So that kind of unlocks the puzzle, because IT admins are then happy because the scope is quite low. Team owners are happy because their app gets to do what they want to do, and developers are happy because they've got the permission to do what they want to do. So that's worth remembering if you get kind of stuck in that place. Resource-specific consent, if it's a Teams workload, might be able to get you out of it. And then if you've never used it before, go and have a look at Graph Explorer. If you want to start looking at these transactional APIs, Graph Explorer is a great place to start. They're just API calls, so you can do them in PowerShell, you can do them in regular code. If you want to write regular code, yep, they're just API calls. There's a million low-code solutions as well, like Power Automate and some of the other ones as well, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But Graph Explorer is a really good way of just understanding what's possible and what the impact is, lets you try out these API calls. A couple of things to be aware of. There's a 1.0 branch and there's a beta branch. They're quite different. 1.0 is GA, beta is not. Beta changes quite quickly, 1.0 changes quite slowly. There are less things in 1.0 than there are in beta. Be aware of things like throttling. If you do anything with an application at scale, you're going to get throttled. It is a bit of a pain and it will kind of come back and bite you. It's just graph protecting itself. And there's the trouble with throttling in a way. The problem is that it's quite hard to know why you're being throttled when you get throttled, because there are published limits and there are some unpublished limits. There are limits at the graph level, there are limits at each service level. So there's an overall big graph throttling limit, and then individual to each service, so Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, whatever, has its own service level limits. You'll get a nice 429 response. Sometimes if you're lucky, you'll get a retry after header, but not always. It completely depends on the service. The kind of what you should do about it, you need to just implement exponential backoff is probably the best thing to do. You can try and rely on the retry after headers, but quite a lot of the time they're not there. Teams does a really good job of publishing rate limits for its use, actually, which is nice. And there's a kind of thing at the bottom which comes straight from the documentation that you shouldn't really use it to poll. There are better ways. I'm going to talk about those now, actually. There are better ways of doing things than just polling all the time to see if data's changed. Kind of little known thing you can do in Graph, you can actually batch calls together. It's a bit more efficient. So you can batch up to 20 together in one go. It works better for your throttling. You don't get throttled so much if you do that. It's better for you. You're not making quite so many calls, and you get the results returned in a single batch response as well. And you can mix and match the calls that you make across different kind of places, different workloads. If you do need to get loads and loads of data out of Graph, calling all those transactional APIs is probably not the best answer. Go and have a look at the bulk data sets, the data connect data sets. They are directly, they're kind of, you set them up and then the data drops directly into Azure Data Factory. So they're really good for getting large amounts of data very quickly. The bad thing about them is that they don't have universal support across all of Graph yet. So it's mostly users and mail at the moment, to be honest. It's not Microsoft Teams yet, but a lot of solutions that involve Microsoft Teams also involve users and sometimes file and mail. So I've kind of mentioned them here in case that kind of comes up and you think, oh yeah, Tom's saying that, you're looking at data sets and Data Connect, because I've decided I need to download all of the mail in my organization. Relatively breaking news, there are also new export APIs for Microsoft Teams, so if that's interesting, and import APIs as well, actually. So you can now import and export messages in bulk as well. And then there are some Delta queries. So Delta queries allow you to, a bit like the old DIRSync. So if you are trying to find changes, you can get a token and then pick up changes since the last token. Okay, this is the other thing you can do with Microsoft Graph. Again, not so well known, are change notifications. So this is better than polling every day to see if something changes. You can tell Graph to tell you when something changes. So it's a webhook mechanism, basically. You set up a subscription for a particular workload, like Teams messages or new channels or like messages in a channel or whatever else it is, and tell Graph to call you back on an endpoint. And when anything happens, Graph will call your API with the information of whatever is changed, whatever is changed. Much nicer to write code for as a developer. Means you're not polling all the time, and that also means you can use something like Azure Functions or any other serverless architecture to really scale it out. And it's really, really low cost as well, which is nice. Really new, like last week, I think, lifecycle notifications. So that's just an additional kind of subscription you can make that means Graph will tell you when your subscription is broken, and so you're not left thinking things have just gone really quiet when actually your subscription was broken because your user was, had their account locked or something like that. Really easy to set up. You just make a post call to the subscription endpoint. You give it the URL that you want Graph to call you back on. You tell it what you want, what you care about, in this case, Teams messages. You give an expiration date and some secret stuff, all really well documented as well, the Microsoft Graph docs. You do that, and then there's a bit of like handshaking where Graph goes to that endpoint and calls it, and then you have to reply in a certain way so that Graph knows you didn't just make it up, and then you're off. Subscriptions depend on the workload. Some are really small, some are really long, but you get told what it is, and you can also renew your subscription before it expires with a patch command, so you can make them last forever as long as you stay responsive. Okay, bit of a whirlwind tour, but there we go. So other big pillar, Teams UI and experience. And this is what people think of when they think of developing for Teams. They think of all the UI and the Chrome and all that kind of stuff. So that this is kind of grown, and actually there's more things that are on this list now, but this is the kind of experience users have of applications and data coming into Teams. Tabs is the big one. Tabs is the one kind of everyone thinks about. It's also really easy to implement because it's just a web page. Messaging extensions, I think, are really underrated. I'm going to show you one in a minute, in case, just to make sure everybody sees them, because I think they're underused and should be used more. And they come in a couple of different variants as well. Task modules are a way of, you hardly ever see, is actually popping up almost like dialog boxes, center of the screen, grab the attention of the user. You can now embed some of these into meeting experiences as well, which is new, kind of announced at Ignite. You can, for the best experience, really, you combine them together. So they're not just one thing. You have an application which combines all of these things together, and you can use them with or without bots as well for a kind of super rich experience, because sometimes a bot experience is the right thing, but sometimes having a tab open a web page for better, more visual information is much better than just trying to deliver it all through a bot. Yes, so let me show you two things real quick. So I'm going to show you message extensions just to make sure you've seen them. So this is Teams, and messaging extensions, you see them down here in this bar at the bottom where you go for your emojis and your GIFs. You can write an application to put your own stuff in here. Why would you want to do that? Let's use a sort of canonical example of a product catalog. So I work at this organization, all our products are in a product catalog. New people into the company take a long time to kind of get skilled up because everybody is talking in these product codes, because they all understand the product codes, but it's a language. It's it's the language of the company, and it takes a long time to learn that language. And as a new starter, people are constantly going back to the product catalog to try and work out what everyone's talking about. This is a great place where a messaging extension could come in, because if I want to start a conversation about a particular product, I can go to my messaging extension here, and this is tied to my fictitious product catalog. So I can just search for a product code, and it's going to go and look in my fictitious, dynamically built, so it takes a few minutes, catalog, and choose that whatever I care, whichever one matches the product code. So this one, and then it'll make a nice card and put it into the conversation. So I'm ready to start a conversation now about this particular product. It's also nicely kind of pulled the link for the CMS. It's pulled some stock information. This is a much nicer way to start a conversation than just putting in product 2245. Let's talk about that, right? Because everybody now understands exactly what that product is, and everybody's got that kind of nice contextual information. And that's really simple to do just by making some API calls out to your legacy database, your legacy third-party system, whatever else it is. By the way, this works really well on mobiles as well. So if you've got legacy third-party applications, this is a really nice way of kind of enabling them for the 21st century, enabling them for lockdown, because now they're accessible on desktop, on web, on mobile in a nice, secure way, in a kind of managed way as well. So this is a much nicer approach. Okay, if all of that sounds kind of interesting, and you think, well, I might want to start with that, but I don't really know where to start. I don't really know what I'm doing. There's a new toolkit that is Microsoft provided. This kind of there's a few of these is the problem. So there's a community provided set of toolkits which are Yeoman generators. So, but if you don't know what Yeoman is, don't worry about it. Just know that they exist, and you might hear people talking about them. But if you like Yeoman, go and look at those. Microsoft have also come up with their own set of generators based around Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. If you want to know what I think probably the Visual Studio Code ones are probably a nicer place to start if you've never done any of this before, just because the support is probably slightly better. So what does that look like? You get Visual Studio Code, which is free. You go and install the Microsoft Teams toolkit, again, which is free. You get a nice Microsoft Teams logo on the side, and then you can click and say, log in, of course. Let's just log in. Okay, lovely. And say, I want to create a new Teams app. Okay, I want to create a Teams app with a tab and/or a bot and/or messaging extension. So I'm literally going to tick some boxes and just kind of move through. I can set up what my application, what I want it to look like. How do I want to configure my tab? Do I want it just in personal scope? Do I want it as a group or Teams channel tab? I'm just going to make a personal one. I'm going to click finish. I'm going to decide where to put it. Let's put it on here. And it's going to make some scaffolding. Now, the nice thing about this is different from a sample or a demo, because it's nothing you don't need and everything you do. So it is the minimally smallest kind of functionally complete application you could build. If you look down here, there's very, very little in here, apart from, I can't really see because the light's in the way. There's very little in here that you don't need. Let me just try and find there's like one line, here you go, that just says, congratulations, this is the tab you made. I could deploy this. It nicely comes with everything. It's done all the scaffolding for all the rubbishy stuff that you have to do to make a Teams application that can be a bit confusing if you've never done it before. And if you come back over to here, it's got a bunch of nice prerequisites for the things you have to do next, how to get it to run. Like, you could follow these if you've never done it before, and you'd get working with a Teams application that just does nothing, but it's an excellent starting point for then layering on the business process, business logic. You haven't got to spend a week figuring out how to actually build a Teams application from scratch, how to build a Teams tab from scratch. It's a really good place to start. So if you're looking to get started building any of that Teams UI stuff, I'd say go check out the Teams toolkit, because I think they're really good. When you do come to build your application, it is worth thinking a little bit about what you're building, why you're building, and who you're building it for. Teams is supposed to be about collaboration, and so your app kind of should make the most of that, make the best of that. It's very easy to kind of think that what you want to do is port over the app that sales or marketing currently have and they currently use in the legacy system, because that's how it's always been and it's 20 years old and that's how they want it to work. I would say go and ask people, go and talk to people. It's been said earlier, users have a ridiculous amount of choice for the applications they use every day. And so if you want them to use yours, just telling them to do so probably won't cut it anymore. So if you want people to use your app, it's got to be good. If you want it to be good, you've got to talk to them about what they want. Don't try and boil the ocean, do one thing well. Just talk to them, design, sit down on the whiteboard with them. Think about the collaboration as well. So think about how you can make the best use of Teams, by enabling people to make it very easy to share the information that you're exposing within conversations and with channels. So things like the messaging extension is a great example of that. Posting information to channels to enable better visibility. All these kind of things help make your application kind of a better Teams application, and don't drive users into a place they can't, in like a dead end that they can't get out of. Okay, let's also talk about bots. So bots they're just really part of the Teams UI, but they're the thing that everybody wants to build. And certainly within Microsoft, they are slightly bigger than Microsoft Teams as a kind of construct. In a way, though, they are just another UI. So if you think about a conversation with a bot, you need to give it the same design care and design thought that you would any other Teams construct, because in fact, it's even harder because your UI is just text for the most part. Yes, you can set cards, coming to that in a minute, and so you can set like images and but it's essentially it's a two-way conversation, and that is the UI that your application has with the user. So you do need to think quite carefully about it. Everybody wants to build a bot at the moment. Luckily, it's actually there's a spelling mistake in my title. It's actually nice and easy, and actually the reason totally makes sense in the context of bringing data and information into where users are having those conversations. So we know users are already in Microsoft Teams collaborating, communicating with each other. If they can reach out to bots, which surface alongside users in the chats and channels, and they're mentionable in the same way that users are, they can reach to those bots to retrieve information, or like kick off process flows, and that could be something within Microsoft 365. It could be something somewhere completely different. Then it's going to keep them in the moment. It's going to keep them more engaged and more kind of productive, essentially, and happier. And if you can do all of that within Teams, then everybody's happy. Okay, so I said that bots in Microsoft Teams were slightly bigger than Teams itself. They're actually an entire service that is nothing to do with Microsoft Teams called Azure Bot Service. This is kind of a thing that's been built up over the past few years. Incorporates a thing called Bot Frameworks. If you've heard that, that's what it is. And the general basic idea for this is that if you want to build a bot, then you build it on the bot framework, and when you've built it on the bot framework, you can then enable it for different channels, meaning that you don't have to understand how all these different channels then kind of communicate with each other and talk to each other, how they interact with each other, how they kind of start and stop and have all their weird mannerisms and all the rest of it. You just write it once against a common framework, and then you kind of literally just tick box to kind of enable it. There's a number of different channels that are supported, including ones like Alexa and Google Home, and it is that simple. So I had a bot I'd written for Microsoft Teams to surface my presence in Teams. So it was a bot that you could talk to, and it would tell whoever was asking it what my presence was. The day that the bot framework team enabled it for Amazon Alexa, I went and clicked the button to say I want this bot to work on Alexa. I kind of had to fill out the stuff on the Alexa developer side, traded some API keys, and then suddenly that same bot that I'd written for Teams now works if I go up to my Alexa devices and talk to it. I didn't have to change any of the code I wrote. It just worked exactly the same. And that's kind of the power of the bot framework, really, is that it enables your bot to show up in lots of different places, of which Teams is one of them, but also Skype for Business, email, Slack, you can embed it in a web page, all these other things. So building on the bot framework, like I say, it's been around for quite a long time. I always talk about building a weather bot as like a good example of how to build a bot, because everybody understands what a weather bot should do, right? It should give you the weather, but also it's a great example because really what you're doing when you're kind of building a weather bot, and when you're running a weather bot, is you're calling an API. You're gathering some information from a user, and then you're making an API call, and you're then rendering the results. So that is a really common thing. Everybody has a use case for in every organization. So understanding how to build a weather bot means that you can take that and then just kind of evolve it into whatever it is your particular use case is. So back in 2017, I used to do a session where I would build a weather bot in a session. It was a 60-minute session. Pretty much the whole thing was me writing code, because it took 60 minutes to write a weather bot using bot framework. It was probably pretty boring to watch, because it's like it was so much code I had to write. I could barely kind of do the talking as well. It was terrifying for me to do as well, because there wasn't any wiggle room. You can see from the photo, I had to take my own keyboard to conferences because there was that much typing. So that was 2017. 2018, that same weather bot, exactly the same weather bot, only took 30 minutes to build. The big thing that changed is that bot framework moved into what's called the Azure bot service. I think that's the name of it, mind blank. The ability to provision the bits that bot framework needs as a service in Azure. And that immediately took away a whole load of the heavy lifting. It came with some excellent templates. So if you go to Azure now and create a new web app bot, you can choose from templates to get a fully functioning bot that, like a really good one is like the Echo bot. So literally anything you send it, it sends back as the text. So you say hello, it says hello. You can then download the code for that. And again, you've then got a minimally kind of working template to go and scaffolded template to go and build off. And it's done all the configuration for you. So that made things so much easier, but it was still 30 minutes and it was still coding. And people go out to the end and said, you don't need to, like, you started this saying you didn't need to be a developer, but then you dropped straight into code. What's going on? And I tried so hard to say, look, the code is really not hard. Look how not hard it is. Download the template and all you're doing is fiddling with bits, but it was still code. And like, yeah, I get it. Like it's a, people don't want to write code. Like, you know, not everybody wants to be a developer, right? So anyway, fast forward to 2010. There is actually now a UI for bot framework. So there is a UI that enables you to write bot framework code. So this, it looks a bit like Power Automate, and in some ways it kind of is. It allows you to drag and drop these composable parts to build a working bot. You can test it with the emulator. You can then, what it's actually doing is writing real bot framework code. So it's not a complete black box abstraction. You can drop into that code to look at it whenever you want. So that's really nice. So you can use it as training as well. If you want to know how to do something, then you can always like build it up in the composer and then actually go and look at the actual code later. It is an excellent way of designing bots with users, because users can understand these flows. It's much easier to see than it is a whole wall of code. If you've got a non-technical user, you can walk them through a flow diagram like this, and they can really understand what the bot is doing. So this is an excellent, like, everybody should go check this out if you want to go and build a bot. Go and find the bot framework composer. And let me just show you what it would look like to build a weather bot using the bot framework composer. Okay, so this is bot framework composer, and I've created a section in here called weather. This is a fairly boring and basic bot. What I should have done is link together all the magical Lewis language understanding stuff, because bot framework composer can handle all of that, makes it nice and easy, but in the interest of time I didn't. So this is a dumb bot that really just gets triggered. This whole thing about the weather gets triggered by me typing weather as a trigger phrase. So that's not perfect, but if I was to build this out, I'd build in all the natural language processing stuff, because actually it's nice and easy to do in the composer. Anyway, not important now. Look at these boxes. So this is how you'd build up a weather bot, and you can see that kind of these all make sense, right? This is bot asks, and I can add more of these just by clicking add, adding these boxes. So things to ask questions, types of questions, creating conditions. I can do looping. What else can I do? I can call external resources like HTTP requests. I've got quite a lot of interesting things I can do. So to build a weather bot like this, I've just asked the user where they want the weather for. I'm just putting it into a variable. I'm sending an HTTP request. This is just a call to like a weather API. And then I'm doing some kind of fairly basic checking on the result that it's a 200, setting a property, and finally sending a response that's based on the response about the weather. I can either publish all of this up to Azure Bot Service from here, or I can test it locally in an emulator. So I'm going to do that now because it's a lot quicker. And that's going to open the emulator. It's going to jump me into a new conversation. Again, no kind of configuration needed. It used to be that you'd have to kind of tie these things together, have it running in one place and the rest of it. This now is a kind of really seamless integration. And so I've got this bot here that I wrote just by dragging these bits around, didn't actually write any code. So I need to do that thing to drop into the weather thing. Okay, it's going to ask me where I want the weather for, because that's the first box. Here we are. That's the first box to say, where do you want the weather for? Let's put in Southampton. I forgot to mention my geographical credentials for being here. I was born in Arundel and grew up in Chichester. So here we go. Right now in Southampton, it is apparently 6 degrees with clear sky. No idea if that's true or not, because I don't live there anymore. But it seems about right, because I do live in Norwich and it's about that as well. So this works. It calls the API. It's an awful lot easier to build than it ever used to be using this bot framework composer. So this is definitely worth checking out if you're building anything with bots. If you're a developer or not, like you can go here, like start here, see how far you get. I think you'll be really surprised how much you can do without actually writing any code. The other thing that's worth mentioning at this point are Power Virtual Agents, also announced at the same Ignite. It wasn't 2020, it wasn't this Ignite, it was on before, wasn't it? Yep, so weirdly at Ignite 2019, yes, Microsoft announced 2 different UIs for building bots, not at all confusing. This one is slightly different. It's part of the Power Platform. It is licensed slightly differently, like you pay for this one a bit more upfront. Bot Framework you still pay for. But you only pay for the resources. Basically, it's free to use, but you pay for the bits that you put into Azure. This has a different licensing model. There's this one. There's also one that's tied to Project Oakdale, which makes it free to do basic tasks as well that I haven't mentioned on here. This is very much pitched as a no-code solution for building bots. So if you or someone you know is much more a kind of more on the businessy side, maybe on the process side, or an SME in a particular area, understands what they want to do, but don't want to doesn't necessarily want to learn how to code up a bot, this might be a good one. There's kind of superpower, if you like, for these virtual agents is their ability to execute flows in Power Automate. So if you have an organization that is really dependent on flows, they've already got loads and loads of flows going on to map different parts of their business, this could be a really nice way of automating those and executing on those. And you can publish these directly to teams. There is some, I didn't mention it here, there is some good overlap as well between both Power Virtual Agents and Bot Framework, because under the hood, they're mostly the same thing. So you can do some really nice things. So if you've got an IT team, let's say in your organization, that is kind of properly dev, they will probably use Bot Framework, and they might use the composer as well, and then drop into real code to augment it out to maybe build something that's really specific to your business. Let's say an internal ticketing system or something, right? They will build that in Bot Framework. They can wrap that up, not necessarily as a bot, they can wrap it up as a skill. Okay, and a skill is like a composable part of a particular bot, and a bot can have many skills. However, business users can then take that skill, they can embed those skills inside Power Virtual Agents. So you can actually trigger a skill from within Power Virtual Agents. So now you can have business users building up in Power Virtual Agents, calling flows all over the place, and also integrating this complicated black box of IT support desk stuff built by the IT team. So that's really powerful as a way of building up some complicated solutions. Okay, I'm aware of time. I've kind of raced, but I know kind of everybody probably wants to have an evening as well. I do want to spend a second talking about templates though, because I think they're amazing. So they were kind of briefly mentioned in one of the other talks as well. They're fully working apps that are built for Microsoft Teams. They are written by Microsoft and or the community. You deploy them directly into your Azure, You can manage them from there. They come with detailed deployment guides. They come with architecture documents, solution and costing. They're completely open source and they're completely free. So there is literally no reason not to use them. All the code for them is on GitHub. And today there's a whole bunch of them. They cover a variety of common business scenarios, such as the kind of icebreaker bot. I think we've seen company communicator as well. There's a bunch of other expert finder ones as well. I've categorized a list, the links at the bottom, because like it was kind of confusing to see what they were and what they were all for. So I've categorized them into different kind of buckets for the business. And they're adding new ones all the time, which is really interesting. Let's just look at one in detail. So there's one of them called list search. So if you've got a bunch of information in a SharePoint list, you can expose that using messaging extensions. So using the thing I've already shown you, giving you a nice place in Teams to kind of easily search that list that's in SharePoint. So that's that might just solve a problem for somebody somewhere, right? So it's really easy to set up. Like I say, you just follow the instructions. So here's what they look like when you go. Yes, it's in GitHub, and that scares some people, but don't worry about it. Look down to the bottom. You've got a nice bit of text that tells you what it is, and then you've got these 3 links for documentation, deployment guide, and architecture. All of the apps in app templates come with these 3 things as a minimum. Documentation is really decent. It tells you exactly what it is, why you have it, you know, what the pros and what the cons are. The deployment guide you can follow. If you can follow instructions, you can follow the deployment guide. That doesn't assume any particular knowledge. It walks you through what you need to do in Azure. It walks you through what you need to set up. Under the hood, they're using a lot of ARM templates. So if you know what they are, that's good. If you don't worry about it. It just means you haven't got to like painstakingly create a million things in Azure. And then they all come with a nice solution overview as well. So if you need to go and get it signed off from someone, and they want to understand what it is, or you just want to understand what it is and how it all hangs together, because you can always take these and use them as like how to learn how to build bots the Microsoft approved way, because they've got the solution overview here and all the codes in GitHub as well. So I think they're really, really cool. And so I think everybody should check them out. Okay, so I'm going to take a break in a second, but wrapping it all together, there's no reason not to start building applications on Microsoft Teams. I don't want people to kind of come away thinking you have to be a real developer to do it. There's lots of zero dev solutions. I haven't mentioned Q&A Maker. I haven't even really mentioned Power Automate. Those are well covered by other people as well. Really, there's no reason for people not to be building Teams apps. It's kind of a really interesting place to be right now. It's where users are. So there's lots and lots of tools out there to kind of help and make these experiences that bring data to people wherever they're already collaborating, wherever they already are. So give it a go today. I think you might be surprised and excited to see what happens. Thanks very much for listening to me. My name is Tom Morgan. Twitter links on the bottom. You can find all the other stuff by following there and starting there. Thanks very much for listening. And if there's any time, we can do some questions. If not, have a great evening.
Cheers, thanks for that, Tom. That was really good. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. I know Jan probably was loving some of that development stuff. Jan and I work quite closely.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I've actually done a lot of the stuff around the Teams subscriptions, actually pulling Teams calls out. Doing Teams call routing reports.
That is really interesting. That's the kind of new, it's in beta at the moment. That is there's a whole wealth of really interesting information there, actually.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fab. It does produce an awful lot of information, though.
Yes, and quite quickly. Yes.
Yes.
It's, yes.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Derrick. I think Kevin dropped off earlier. He had some kids issues. Hopefully his own kids. Yeah, it's been great. And hopefully we can do something in person next year. Maybe we'll book out a room at a venue and sit in the corner of the room each and put a face mask on. But yeah, no, it's really good. Thank you very much.
No, it's fantastic. Thank you.
Cool. Brilliant. Thanks very much. Great.
Yeah, and it's nice to. There's quite a few names on the attendee list as well. That's quite new. There's obviously a few that I know of. But yeah, hopefully for the next one, you know, in early January, we can get a few more people, a few more faces. That'd be really good. Fab, excellent. All right. Well, thank you all. I will I'll finish up there unless anyone's got any questions. All nice and quiet. Excellent. All right, guys. I'll leave you all to your evening, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, Aaron.